Hola, damas y caballeros, Senor Arroz here. Ladies and gentlemen, today's video is definitely for teachers, especially young teachers, especially beginning teachers, especially teachers who are in those early years of their career. So teaching, just like any other profession, has its pluses and minuses, its pros and cons, its good things, well actually overwhelmingly good things, couple things not so good, or at least depending how you look at it. So ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going over 5 hard truths about the teaching profession, 5 hard truths about being a teacher, the teacher lifestyle, whatever you want to call it. 5 hard truths that you should know about, that you should probably expect. Let's dig in. The first hard truth to face as a teacher, and I really put this one in first place, number 1. The first hard truth is that not every student you have is going to like you. Okay, that's just a fact about being a teacher, and there could be lots of reasons. I mean, if you're a strict teacher, then not every student, definitely not all of them, are going to like you. If you're one who you have rules and you actually enforce the rules, guess what? Not every student is going to like you. But here's the frustrating part. What if you're one of those happy teachers? You're fair, you're fun, you're funny, you make class great, and all that stuff, and yet there's 1 or 2 students who don't like you, and you can't figure out why, and it frustrates you. Guys, it's just gonna happen. It's just gonna happen. I mean, if you're like me, I mean, I teach 5 classes. I have, roughly 35 students per class. So I have upwards of, over 150 students. Guess what? It's just like a mathematical inevitability that someone in that large number, someone in that bunch is not gonna like you. I mean, 150 plus people, you can't get 150 people to agree on one thing. You can't get 150 people to agree that the sun is hot. So you think you're gonna get 150 people to like you? No, forget about it, okay? But here's the thing. Do your very best to not take it personally, because almost all of the time it's not. And if you're teaching young students, if you're teaching kids, you're teaching high school like me, never forget this. These students, they're great, they're wonderful, but they're still kids, okay? And they often do and say things for no reason, reasons they can't even explain, reasons they don't even know. There could be a student who doesn't like you, you can't figure out why, and neither can they. And they're not going to tell you, probably for a couple of reasons. Because, they don't want to tell you. But even if you somehow, in a roundabout way, you ask what the reason is, you ask through one of their friends, sometimes their friend doesn't even know, because the student themselves, very often, they don't even know. That's right, they don't like you, and they can't explain why, because they simply don't know. And if anybody presses them about it, they would say, well, I just don't like Mr. Arroz because, well, just cause. And sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes that's the reason. Right, that simple juvenile reason, or lack of a reason if you want to call it, sometimes that's the reason. Just accept it. Don't take it personally, and never forget, it's not your job to be liked by everybody. It's your job to serve all the students and serve them well. Serve their needs. If they like you, of course that's the ideal. If they like you, of course that's a good side effect, a good byproduct of your teaching and serving them well. But it's not necessary. It's actually not your job. Don't forget that. Number 2 on my list, guys, the second hard truth that you need to understand and accept as a teacher is that there will be conflict of one sort or another in your class at some point. Okay, you could start off a year with nothing but great classes, and you start telling yourself, hey, there's not going to be any problems, there's not going to be any need for discipline this year. I've got the dream team in every one of my classes, and in most regards, maybe you do. But once again, we're talking about, upwards of 150 people. Somebody's going to say something. Somebody's going to do something, or it could be something more subtle. It could be somebody is failing because they're not doing their work. Somebody's failing because they're absent too much. So it could be something big. It could be something subtle. But here's my tip. Do not begin a year. Don't go around telling yourself, oh, this year there's not going to be conflict. There's not going to be any trouble. Don't go telling yourself that, and certainly don't get attached to this idea of a perfect school year, of perfect classes, problems-free. Because the more you're attached to that, then the more disappointed and maybe outright shocking it is to you when somebody acts up and you have to enforce some heavy rules, or sometimes the most disappointing, you have such a good relationship with these really good kids. It's all laughs and smiles, and then that one kid who you think, is close to you and respects you, they act out, they tell you a 4-letter word, do something like that, and it's like you're heartbroken. Okay, your heartbreak may very well be traced back to your attachment to that idea that nobody's going to act up, things are going to be perfect. You have the students' ultimate respect, and they're never going to be imperfect human beings. They are imperfect human beings. They're going to be imperfect human beings, and in one way or another, there's going to be conflict, at least a tiny bit, in every school year. Be ready for it. Number 3 on my list of hard truths about being a teacher. Teachers, listen up, get ready. Sometimes your lessons, no matter how well you've planned them, rehearsed them, acted them out, sometimes your lessons will fail in one way or another. Okay, you can plan, you can over-plan. I definitely don't recommend over-planning. That's kind of a subject for a different discussion. But you can plan your heart out and think that you have a masterpiece, and sometimes that lesson doesn't go well. Students don't understand. They're not engaged in it. They ask a lot of questions at the end, and that makes you think you weren't clear, okay. Sometimes a lesson is going to fail, or it's not going to go well. It may just crash and burn. Don't be so doggone hard on yourself. Over the years, spoiler alert, I've known a bunch of teachers. And many times I've seen teachers on a certain day, they are just absolutely devastated because a lesson didn't go well. And it didn't go well times X amount of classes, and they're depressed and they're demoralized and they're having a rotten day. It's just part of being human. You're not a perfect person. You're not a perfect teacher. Some lessons just don't go so well. So what do? It's all about your attitude and how you respond to it. Okay, you don't have to abandon that lesson. Approach that lesson a different way. Go after that lesson tomorrow with a different approach. Consult some other teachers, your friends, your colleagues. Ask about a different approach and do it differently. Eventually, I think it's going to go over well. Just get over it. Or, this is going to be really blunt, get over yourself. Sometimes you're going to have failures, and it's okay. Never forget, it's just one day that went badly. Assuming it's the whole day, it's just one day that went badly. It's a long school year with upwards of 200 days. And if you're thinking of having a very, very long career, then think about this. You're going to be in the classroom, if it's a really long career, upwards of 20 to 30, you're going to be in the classroom upwards of 3,000 days. Okay? So sometimes you're going to have one bad one here or there. Get over it. Get over yourself. Humble yourself. You learn to laugh it off and go at it the very next day. Number 4 on my list, the fourth hard truth to understand as a teacher is that there will be times when you get tired and you get burned out. Okay, now I've chosen my words very carefully. Notice I didn't get so dramatic as to say there will be times when you just want to quit and walk away from the profession. I'm not saying that at all. I've never had those thoughts. I've never had those feelings. I don't know many who have. And I would venture to say, if you ever feel so bad that you're wondering what you're doing in the profession and maybe you need to walk away, well, then maybe you need to put some serious thought in it. No, I've chosen my words carefully. There will be times when you are tired. There will be times when you get burned out. I will go so far as to say that there will be some days where you feel like not going to work. And I want to say these feelings are human, they're natural, they're normal. Look, I think we all know teaching. As a teacher, you're a high value person. It's a noble, honorable profession. And I've known teachers over the years who I think get a little too wrapped up in those ideas to the point where they get a little self-righteous. And they seem to believe things like this. They seem to think, oh, it's the students. They're allowed to be tired. I'm not allowed to be tired. They're allowed to be burned out. I'm not allowed to be burned out. They're allowed to go through a day or two or maybe a period of time of being kind of unmotivated. I'm not allowed to be unmotivated. None of these things are true, guys. You're just as human as they are. But of course you need to have limits. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to here and there feel some low motivation because you're tired, a little burned out, you've been putting in effort, but you're not allowed to walk into your classroom one day and say, hey kids, hey students, I'm a little tired today, so I'm going to put my head down on my desk and go to sleep. Okay, you got to have limits. You can't go that far. But you're allowed to feel a little tired. You're allowed to feel a little burned out. You shouldn't apologize. I'm not saying you have to announce it, but you shouldn't apologize for it. And you also shouldn't feel bad. It's normal and natural. In fact, I would even say that if there are times of the year when you're not tired, you're not burned out, that makes me wonder, hey, are you putting in enough effort to begin with? Are you putting enough of your heart and soul into your teaching, your lessons, the day-to-day grind? Are you giving enough of yourself to your students to get yourself tired? That's what I would say. But personally, in November, when it's, when we're a week out from Thanksgiving, when I know that big vacation is just right there, slightly out of reach, do I feel a little tired? Do I feel a little burned out? Of course I do. I never want to quit the profession. I know that vacation's coming up, and that vacation is a necessary break. I don't hate teaching. I don't hate my school. I don't hate my classroom. Just like anything else, you can have a little too much of one thing and you need just a little rest, just a little break. And as a teacher, your next break, your next vacation is always right there around the corner. You will get that rest, rejuvenation, and then get right back in the game. But anyway, various times of the year, it's okay. Don't question yourself. It's okay if sometimes you feel tired, a little burned out. Doesn't mean you're a bad person, a bad teacher. Doesn't mean you've lost your passion for the profession. You're just a little tired, just a little burned out. Get some rest, get back in the game. It's cool, it's natural. Guess what? We all go through it. And finally, the fifth hard truth to understand and accept as a teacher. Ladies and gentlemen, this is, in my mind, this is actually the hardest one. Here it comes. You can't save them all. You can't save them all. And what I'm talking about is there are students who, and they should be very rare, but there are students who are going to fail, okay? And it will almost certainly be for reasons outside of your control, okay? You can provide the warmest, most welcoming, fun, easy to learn classroom at your school, and yet there will be that student who doesn't show up and they fail. Okay, now if a bunch of kids are failing, you might want to take a look at your teacher. Hey, is it something you're doing? But if by and large students are flourishing, they're succeeding, but then there's that one who's getting an F, it's time to look at the reasons why. And I, for one, occasionally have this kind of student. Honestly, I usually have like one per year. Sometimes a year goes by and there's not that student, so sometimes it's 2 years or whatever, but there's that student who fails. And in my experience, it's because of their own self-destructive reasons. It's the student who's absent 4 days a week, or at least 3 days a week consistently. When they are here, they're in trouble for one thing or another. They're suspended. They're in some other situation because they've been in fights. They're taking drugs. It's all these kind of self-destructive things that they're keeping them out of the classroom. And when they are in the classroom, they're so behind in work. They don't know what's going on because they haven't been around. And you do what you can to help them. You try to motivate them. You try to make them smile. You try to make them laugh. Your heart is invested, but they're not doing their part even a tiny bit. And next thing you know, it's the end of the semester. You can leave all doors, windows of opportunities wide open for them. You can tell them, hey, you can make up all the work. Just do it well. I'll give you the credit. If you just do it, if you just commit to doing it, and they don't do it. And next thing you know, it's that student who, at the end of the semester, they're earning a single digit percentage in your class, and there's nothing more you can do, and you end up giving them an F. And I've been there several times. It's not a good feeling. So it's something to understand as a teacher. It's pretty inevitable. Sometimes you have that student, and there's really like nothing much you can do other than your best, but they won't meet you halfway. They won't meet you even 10% of the way, and that's how it goes sometimes. It's almost impossible to not feel bad about it, but at the same time, a situation like I just described, make sure you don't see it as your fault, okay? It's that student, it's that time in their life, they're making these choices, they're the wrong choices, but if there's any hope in a situation like that, here's where it is on you. You gotta be humble enough, you gotta be open-minded enough to look beyond your own tenure. Look beyond the limits of your personal class. You might not be able to reach that student while they're your student. But here's the hope. Maybe next year, a couple years down the road, hopefully while they're still at your school, they get their act together, and maybe they will flourish and get it together a little bit later, even if it's not because of you directly, even if it's not in your class. I have some experience with this. A few years ago, I had a girl, exactly what I described. Chronically absent, chronically in trouble, suspended left and right, taking drugs and all this stuff. I was nice to her. Almost convinced her to do a little bit of work, but in the end I couldn't. The end of the year came and she had like 6% in the class. It was disappointing. It's a really let down kind of feeling. But then I thought to myself, okay, I wasn't able to reach her myself within the calendar year of my class, but who knows, maybe next year, the year after that, somebody else can. I can hope for that. And lo and behold, I find out that a couple years later, another teacher tells me she's doing the work, has a good attitude, showing up for class, and I'm like, good. That's all that I would have hoped for her. I'm not hung up on the fact that it wasn't that the good stuff didn't happen in my class. That's okay. It happened later, and the person seemed to be getting their life on track, and that's the only thing that matters. So sometimes even in a situation like that, sometimes there is a rainbow at the end of the storm. Sometimes there is, sometimes they're not. Sometimes it happens while they're your student, sometimes not. Just understand it's gonna happen, and all you can do is your best. Well, damas y caballeros, these have been 5 hard truths about being a teacher, the teaching profession, the whole teacher lifestyle. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think I've left anything out, if you think something else deserves some priority or at least a mention, please put it down in the comments below. And if you've liked what you've seen and heard, please like this video, please subscribe, please share on social media with your friends. You know the drill, you know the drill. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, gracias por escuchar, gracias por mirar. He dicho.